Welcome to the Grappling Grappling Rewind Podcast.
Welcome to this week on the Grappling Rewind Podcast. On this week's show, we are going to recap Who's Number 126, headlined by Diego Pato Oliveira versus Keith Krikorian. We are also going to run through the Polaris 31 event, the squads event, talk about those matchups for that entire event, and then the title fight with Helena Cravar. As always on the show, I'm your host, Maine, my co-host,
Corey.
How you doing, Corey?
I'm doing phenomenal, bro.
Doing good. Let me check, make sure. Talk right into that right there. We are apologies if the audio takes a hit this week. I'm still in the process of building the studio. I got about a couple thousand pounds of drywall delivered today. So after the podcast, Corey's going to actually help me bring that in because we're going to get a snowstorm here in Baltimore. So enjoy, Corey. I've told you that before. But,
hey, man.
We had a phenomenal weekend of matches. It was a busy weekend for Miranda and myself, which is why she's out this week. Her and I went down to Virginia to commentate Copa Elite 4. Phenomenal event. Was a lot of fun. Again, I love going down and working for those guys. The card was great. We don't usually recap that event after we do it because if you want to hear kind of our takes and thoughts on it, you can just listen to the broadcast because that's our takes and thoughts. Again, love working with those folks. It's always a lot of fun to do commentary for them. And again, it's a great day. So we are back here. I don't have a ton of news. I kind of just want to get right into the recap of the Lightweight Championship between Diego Pato Oliveira and Keith Krikorian. This is a rematch of the 2022 ADCC.
Yeah,
ADCC,
yep.
Where Pato had a footlock.
Straight ankle.
Yeah, on Keith in the second round.
I think it was first round.
First round, man.
Knocked him out first round.
We previewed this last week, and in the entirety of the week, we have also in the last week, I have run. My coach got sick, so I ran the entirety of our associations in house, and then had commentary, and then had this. It's been a busy week for me.
But it was a great event, though, bro. It was a great event.
It was fun. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I thought this matchup, when we previewed it last week, was going to go really similar to how it went in ADCC 2022. I was actually pretty wrong about that, and the dynamics of the matchup were pretty significantly different. And I want to get your thoughts of the ADCC rule set versus the Who's Number 1 rule set. And there's a couple bouts here where we're going to go in depth on the Who's Number 1 rule set, how the judging and decisions work, specifically with the Ronaldo Junior match versus Jay Rodriguez. I think we both on the pre-show had some thoughts about how that particular matchup played out scoring-wise and broadcast-wise. Between the Who's Number 1 rule set and the ADCC rule set, do you think that was the larger driver for what made this match so different, or do you think it was a development of Pato's skill set at AOJ, or what do you think? What made this matchup look so? Was it Keith's preparation? What do you think here? Putting you on the spot.
Well, I think Pato's game has definitely developed. After watching this match, he was definitely dominant now from the top. He's, for the most part, I guess in my opinion, has been bottom guy entering the legs, Baron-Bowler kind of rolling under, leg attacks, what have you. He has a fair amount of submissions via rear naked choke and what have you, stuff like that. But he's, for the most part, been
his big highlight reel wins have typically been in the legs. Again, you look at the win over Dante, which is again the bout that he won to get this title in the first place. Was Dante Leon was champion.
Sure.
He heel hooks Dante Leon to take this title. And we've known he was a great leg locker. He played a ton of matrix guard to get to the back. I remember sitting with the guys that were in his camp in 2022, and they were talking about that guard and how he was going to play it. And he was a foot locker, but it has been interesting to watch him kind of progress from being not necessarily an old game to a new game, but he seems to be a guy that is adding new tools and new skill sets. And I think this match for me was more of a reflection of him coming in with more confidence. Again, he's already beat Keith. He knows he's one of the best, if not the best guy in the world in the division. He's the champion in this organization. He felt really, it seems, confident putting it to Keith. I mean, from the jump of the match, the first or second exchange of the match, he pulls, and then Keith goes to do a jumping pass over the half guard or the knee shield.
And then he just rolls him back. Perfect timing, rolls him back, and all of a sudden,
the timing was the thing that I saw from this match.
And then his top game's what's developed. His top game, he was top dominant majority of this match. I mean, there was a lot of exchanges, I think, but you can definitely see the maturation of his top game. So, and that's why I think it's evolving now, because he's acquiring a more of a complete game.
I mean, he's a world champion. Like,
he's a world champion on his, but
you see again,
it's different looks.
With the camp change, with the camp change, you're going to see that camp is going to build different things about him. For him to, again, the thing that struck me immediately was just his timing throughout this entire match, and that we saw it really, really early with that sweep. Keith overcommits on the jump over to try to essentially jump over to go to north-south on this guard pass. Pato keeps pressure on the hip. He rolls him over completely, and then, I don't know if you saw it, when he rolls him over to mount, you could see him decide if he wanted to go to armbar, go to triangle, or try to take the back, and he watched Keith push back down.
I missed that part.
I'm going to go back to mount here.
Gotcha.
But you saw that he was a full step ahead in the transition to mount, and you saw Krikorian put very much on the defensive very, very early, and it's not a lot of guys are going to have the timing at lightweight to be able to do that. And it takes such ground from a really from an overcommitment like that of Krikorian. Krikorian will finish that pass on a lot of guys. Most of the guys that are not ranked in the top 10 in the world, Krikorian's probably going to throw that pass at you and be pretty successful most of the time.
Agreed.
But for Pato to see it, identify it, go with it, roll it, and then take it all the way into a mount that he keeps for a minute or so. He keeps pot position early in the match pretty significantly, and that was sort of the flavor of the match. Krikorian, again, to his credit, phenomenal defensively. He again doesn't get subbed in this match versus Pato, and Pato has subbed him before in their last match. It was really nice to see that Krikorian was his defense was on par, even for I thought what a more aggressive Pato than we even saw in ADCC 2022. That match,
I think so. Yeah,
primarily more in the legs. You were saying.
On the legs, but now he had a couple back attacks. You see, he kind of came up on that attempt from Keith. He comes up, he rolls up, and then he proceeds to stay on top at least another minute or so, and then you can kind of see him switching between the back. He took the back pretty early, and he just rolls him through, and all of a sudden he's just attacking from the back or from the top.
Yeah, it was.
And then there's a point in time where he's actually, I guess, Keith comes up because Keith was game. He was game. He's like, let's go, and then you see. Pato's very, very tough guard. Keith was trying to pass his guard, and he was having a tough time passing Pato's guard.
You saw kind of, and I liked it from Keith. You saw kind of a depth of game from Keith where it's I'm going to try outside passing, I'm going to try inside passing. You saw Keith not necessarily get just shelled in the same range. Eventually, you saw Keith decide to sort of go to knees down and pressing again. You don't really want to stand too close to Pato because he's a guy that, again, you can heel hook Dante Leon from that standing guard above you. And there's probably not a lot of guys in the world that you're not going to be able to take a leg home with. Again, it's in your weight class.
Yeah.
You saw Keith elect to go to that knees down position, kind of sit in longer, and then even then, you see Pato be willing to make the distance and sort of have the match that they had in 2022. Cool. We're going to go into the feet. Pato was getting the deeper entries. He was getting Keith much more on the defensive, whereas in their match in 2022, he was in the driver's seat, but you could see him being and needing to counter. And I think that was also a reflection of the range that he wanted to play with Keith in 2022 was sort of that mid-range outside where it's cool, I can go underneath you, I can invert under for your back.
Sure.
And this one, it seemed like he was almost much more confident in his ability to wrestle up and go to things like the X, the high leg X guards, and play out of in a range that Keith, again, didn't quite have the timing that Pato had in the match and exchanges, so Pato could just continue to stay a step ahead in the legs. Keith would go down for something, Pato would be ahead, he would start to free the knee line out, he would come up, and it was just an exercise in Pato having that phenomenal timing and knowing where Keith wanted to go, intercepting it, and then just getting to play his own game for the entirety of the match. So it goes to the decision. I don't think there was no question, that it was going to go for Pato here because the two big moments of the match are those mounts.
Yeah, I think so. And I think it was. I mean, Keith was game from the jump. I think he looked a little gassed at maybe that last minute and a half before Pato mounted him. You can tell he just blew his load. But he was still game, and it was just a back and forth, and that was refreshing because typically when Pato gets up like that on someone, it's
game over.
It's game over. But I like how it became chippy, but they were kind of smiling. You can tell they were having fun at the end of that match. It was pretty cool to see.
I also didn't realize that Pato's 25.
He's young.
I don't know why I didn't I knew that he was on the younger side, but for some reason I thought he was like late 20s, early 30s. I didn't realize he was as young because Keith now was 27. Like Keith is starting.
Okay.
It's funny to have Keith now. Again, we've been talking about Keith
as the older grappler,
almost 10 years now. Keith now being the older grappler in this matchup, where it's like, oh, you're now taking on the young champion in a guy like Baby Shark or Pato. It's like, oh, that's a really just for some reason. This match in particular, I hadn't realized that Pato was 25. Like I've seen it, we've talked about it before, but it was just really interesting the contrast. Like they flashed for the tail of the tape, and it was Krikorian 27, Oliveira 25, and I went, oh, that's really interesting. That like again, you have a young champion at lightweight.
It's a testament to how good Pato is. He's been around forever, and he's only 25.
Yeah, man.
He's been on top of his game for quite a long time now.
A couple years now, at least. Yeah. And he's just continuing to get better. Again, I'm kind of curious, and I'm not sure if you have thoughts, who they give him at lightweight. Because he's probably not going to go – he's not going to face Cole because Cole's the same team. And AOJ guys typically are not big on teammate fights. Like I'm trying to think of, again, who's number one – doesn't update their rankings as much as I would love them to online. Make it easy to find. We have both had issues this week trying to find stuff online for both Fight Pass. You watched the wrong Polaris there for a little bit.
Thanks,
like, man. Watch on his match. I was like, Dante was not on this week. You're like, watch Polaris 30. I was like, awesome. It's Polaris 31.
I was ready to talk about it, man. You're like, oh man, that's the last one. Yep. That's what it is.
But again, I've struggled. You struggled too to find some of the stuff at who's number one. I don't know what the rankings look like. I don't know who. I mean, if Baby Shark's but Baby Shark, I would love to see at 45 again. I don't really want to see Baby Shark move up to 55. He can absolutely hold the weight, and he can do it. But again, I would just much rather Pato fight someone that's like at 55 that can't make 45. Like, give him a guy. Do you give him?
Has he fought Mikey?
Mikey's like a 35er. I would love to see it though.
I think that'd be good.
That'd be an awesome match.
I think that'd be awesome.
But Mikey's, I think too small. I think Mikey's now exclusive with UFC. He went from the one contract to the UFC contract, and he's like, hey, man, I'm going to make the money.
I got you.
So think about it. If you come up with someone, let me know. I was thinking like Tackett, and then like realized that we've been covering Tackett so long. Like, yeah, man, Tackett can make 77 barely. He's not making 50. Really well.
Yeah.
Okay, well, so it's
He's a big boy now.
And we're talking about Roberto Jimenez later. It's like, oh yeah, Roberto Jimenez, like that guy used to be 145er. He's now facing Elder Cruz at 205 and looking fine, doing like, oh right. That is I think for me the funniest thing about doing this show over the years is like you get guys that are purple, brown, black prospects like early in their career. They're like, oh, this guy's going to be something really good. And then watching them end their career like lightweight or like end their career like middleweight or ultra. You're like, oh yeah,
light heavy.
I've been watching this guy go up 4 weight classes. Like the Toller brothers. I interviewed Ty when he was a 16-year-old kid in 66. Like he was dying when he was 16 to make 66 kilos. Now he's like comfortably at like 85, 205 constantly. And it just makes me laugh how like the guys at 60, like him and his brother are never going to fight Cronston again.
No,
it's like what? It's because Cronston's a 66, maybe 70 guy. They're never gonna cross again because it doesn't make any sense unless you're in an absolute. So
what about Grippo? Yeah, Grippo lightweight. Was he too big?
Ooh, that would be a good one.
I would like to
see
that
Johnny
one.
Grippo. I would love to. Yeah, Johnny Grippo matchup would be.
Sorry, it took me a minute there. I'm thinking while you're talking here.
No, it's good. I don't know if we've actually seen Grippo on Who's Number One before. That seems like a real miss. Like, we see Grippo still in a lot of IBJJF stuff, but he has been. Like, I don't know, recently, Grippo goes through, like, stages with me, like, watching his game. Recently, I've been, like, an uptick of watching more and more Johnny Grippo matches.
Yeah.
And he's been just killing people with the head and arm. And I'm like, I want to see if Johnny Grippo compete more.
He was recently at B-Team down there for like a week, and I saw some of that training.
You saw the video with him and Jay Rodriguez when he couldn't put Jay Rodriguez away. And we were all like, yo, why is Jay Rodriguez so hard to submit? Because Johnny Grippo, that's the thing that he's, like, one of the subs that he's the best at.
And that might play into our conversation later on when we talk about
leading in.
Yes.
So,
Sorry.
Again, phenomenal lightweight match. Let's move on to a match that was 16 seconds long. Roberto Jimenez, light heavyweight, versus Elder Cruz. He hits a flying armbar off of Elder Cruz's collar tie grip.
Crazy.
After like a takedown sequence that went off the mats, like I saw the highlight.
The Elder won. Elder kind of pushed him out, wrestled out, and
I saw the highlight, and I was like, that's the whole match. And I was like, for brevity, let me just watch the entire match in case because I try to do it when I have time. I was like, I've seen the highlight. That's the sub. It's a 16-second match. And I watched that. I went, this match has way more than I thought it had in 16 seconds. Some are reporting is 15.
Yep.
Some are reporting is 16 seconds. Elder Cruz wins that first wrestling exchange. And I thought it was really interesting because Elder Cruz, in my recollection, I don't remember him typically coming out really, really quick. Or maybe he'll have a single burst.
Yeah.
And then he'll be kind of slow back down. Like historically, whenever we've talked about an Elder Cruz match, we've usually talked about like he's a guy that will beat you in the last minute and a half. 90 seconds, maybe like almost 2 minutes. Like he kind of pulls you into a speed. He wears you down.
Like a slow burn.
And then he burns.
Yeah.
And the end for that, he like will burst for like the last 90 seconds and he'll take 2 points on you. He'll take something off of you in those final exchanges because he's really good. He knows what to do. For this match in particular, there is a tendency that Elder Cruz has that I'm very curious if other people will be able to exploit now. It's Elder Cruz when he collar ties. He tends to collar tie both hands on your neck and pull you down, not uniformly, but like he really wants, especially early in a match, even midway through the match, he wants to fatigue you. He wants to lean on you for a long time, make you carry his weight. He will stand a little bit close to you, elbows kind of bent in, but he'll do something that you're kind of taught, especially the lighter weight guys, to not do. Is he leans his weight like into you and he makes you carry it, but he also lets you carry his weight. Like those are two kind of different things, like making someone carry your weight and letting someone carry your weight. And if you let someone carry your weight, you commit a little bit more of your weight to them, but if they move, you can be like counter snapped and moved around. But it will fatigue the other person if they can't do that much more because they're carrying 10 or 15 or 20 extra pounds because you're really leaning into them. Elder Cruz does this with a double collar tie. As a result, when he leans into you, he is pretty much stuck in that position.
He tied himself to you.
He tied himself to you. Yeah. And so as a result, it's very interesting that Roberto Jimenez hits a flying armbar here because that is one of the problems that comes with playing a collar tie sequence like this. So committed, so heavy, pulling the guy into you. If that guy just decides to go with it, he can take your arm. He can flying armbar you like this. Again, at light heavyweight, really, really uncommon. Yeah. You're going to see guys like Roberto Jimenez. I'm trying to think of another light heavyweight guy we've seen. Maybe like Davi Ramos isn't light heavyweight.
Renato Canuto's not light heavyweight.
He's 77 kilo. Barge Tackett's 77 kilos. Mika's 70, 80 kilos. Like
a little
most
lighter.
of those guys are on like a weight class or 2 weight classes below all the high flying guys. That is uncommon. But again, we talked about weight classes and guys transitioning through their career. Roberto's not a guy that started at light heavyweight. He's a guy that started as a kid.
And you might see someone like Ronaldo do it, but still, Ronaldo's a weight class down as well. He's middleweight.
He's still middleweight, yeah.
Yeah, that is kind of a different thing to do for light heavyweight.
That's what I mean. It's different. It's a really like a guy like, and Couch is not really gonna like throw like that either. Like he's gonna throw you up from the bottom, but he's not gonna usually hit like a flying armbar on you. Like again, in women's weight classes, like Amanda Lev is another one at the heavier women's weight classes that will throw that, and she used a highlight reel. We cut one for her, or of her, not for her, of her 6 or 7 years ago, of her just flying armbarring women in Nogi.
Wow.
At the heavyweight. She was again 35, 45 at that point. Now she's into the heaviest class, but then it's something that she did. Roberto Jimenez is a guy that started out his career 35, 45, 55, 65, like the lower weight classes where he was a pretty active, like not necessarily a high flyer, but a guy that would absolutely jump for stuff on you given the opportunity. It has been interesting to watch him kind of keep that into the later weight classes. It reminds me a little bit of Gordon Ryan going from like 170 early career and then up into like 200, 205, 220. Like he, for the first like year, maybe 2 years, had maybe longer than 2 years. The first couple years he was big, he retained a lot of the little guy stuff that he was doing at 170. Because he was never like an imposing 170er. You know, he was like, he was pretty long, he was pretty lanky, he was like extremely strong, he was elite, but he wasn't like a physically imposing 170er. He was crafty, he was a crafty 170er. And then he got up, and you looked at the first EBI that he did when he was big. It was like he was doing some stuff versus, I think Yuri was in that one, Yuri Samos. And you're like, oh yeah, Gordon is the smaller guy doing and playing this at the weight now, but still like he is the smaller guy. And you saw an interesting technical depth there that a lot of the bigger guys, especially back then, just didn't have phenomenal answers for. And so I'm curious if Jimenez, again, different styles of game. Jimenez doesn't have the type of game that Gordon had, but it is an interesting parallel of a smaller guy that has now gotten much, much bigger.
It still plays a small man's game.
And has retained some of that small guy stuff. So that's what I want to talk about for Roberto Jimenez versus Elder Cruz.
It was impressive.
Specifically that collar tie grip that Cruz leans on really heavy, potentially leaving him open for this flash stuff.
Man, it happened so fast. I thought I missed the fight. I thought it was a highlight. I'm like, no, that's the whole fight. I'm like,
replay and also the entire fight. I really love when you have stuff that's like super, super quick like that, because you see, you're like, oh, that's the entire fight. It's like, boom, like the Masvidal knee. You're like, that's the entire fight.
Yeah,
you've seen bell to bell the entirety of the thing.
And I think I watched that fight 8 times. And it took me less than 2 minutes. It was
you're
amazing.
like, oh, let me see what it is. Oh, the collar grip, and like, there's really not much to say about it other than like,
well done.
We're not gonna see many. It's one of those items like, Cruz does this, but we're probably not gonna see a lot of guys be able to actually repeat this performance, even if Cruz changes nothing about the way that he tends to collar tie guys, that committed double collar tie. It's one of those funny things where you're like, it's a problem that you'll probably never see again.
Not at his weight class. And if he goes down, to medium.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to go down.
Medium or light.
Cruz he might. You'll see it, but it just one of those funny, like a fluke that you'll probably see one time. So, anything else on that one?
Nope.
Let's move on to the light heavyweight bout. Ryan Aitken versus Luccas Lira. This was a lot more entertaining than I thought it was going to be. No, sorry. This is as entertaining than I thought it was going to be. It was much more back and forth. It is as back and forth as I had hoped it was going to be. We saw good entries from Lira. We saw good entries for takedowns from Ryan Aitken. We saw guard pulls on both sides. We saw position reversals. Like, I was actually really happy with the matchmaking on this one. This was the first match on the card. I watched this in reverse order.
Oh, I see. Got it.
When I say the first match on the card, this was the first one where I'm still a bit confused about the who's number one judging criteria. I think, again, all the decisions here were fine, but I'm just a little confused what their criteria that they're using is. There's a world where Luccas Lira wins this. Mm-hmm. There's a world where Ryan Aitken wins it. In reality, Ryan Aitken wins it, but Luccas Lira, I think, in other rule sets could absolutely have won this, which again speaks to the match being close. It was a good match,
which is what you want. You want a close match.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Which is fine. But it was, again, I'm just in watching this in reverse order. There's a couple of matches on the card where I'm like, okay, I can see how he could win. We're grappling. I would love to have a little bit more clarity on exactly what criteria that they're using, especially if they're going to broadcast this person's winning.
Agreed.
Then this person, because who's number one uses that 15-minute matches, or they break however long the match is, because certain matches aren't 15 minutes, into thirds. So the first third of the match is one person. The second third of the match, they'll announce it after the thirds of the match, like judges favor this person, which I think is great for open scoring. I do think open scoring is a really good thing. I think all combat sports should have open scoring. Imagine you're doing like a ball sports game or like a basketball game, and they don't tell you like who's winning.
That'd be interesting.
You're like,
who's winning?
It wouldn't be. You're like,
who's winning?
you're competing at the highest levels of sport, at least tell the guy if he's doing what he should be doing. Like give him the information that you have on your card to let him know, let him make, because we've seen
an informed decision
in MMA. It's like, okay, the guy is like, well, you might have won that round. It's like, why does the guy have to go back to his corner and play a guessing game? Well, because why? If he won the round, he's now in a title fight example in MMA, 5 rounds, 5 minutes apiece, 3 rounds end. Okay, one guy's won 3 of those rounds. That will drastically change the available what you can do in that fight. Man, I can coast these 2 rounds, play defensively, or like keep my offense up to keep him off of me and win that fight. Versus, hey man, you're 2-1.
That's different.
Where it's like, okay, you now have, like, you've got to get the next round because it still could be a very even fight.
You could very well lose this
You're
fight.
not giving the athletes the information that they need to go and make actionable decisions for performance. And I always find that a little disrespectful. So I do appreciate that who's number one is at least telling, like, hey, up to this point in the match, for this 5-minute period, this is who we're favoring. But when you judge the match as a whole, that gets confusing. So let's move in order. Let's go to Tainan Dalpra, because really this comes into the middleweight bout with Ronaldo Junior and Diego Rodriguez. That's where this discussion, I think we're going to kick it off. But let's go in order here. We're going in order. Tainan Dalpra versus Rene Sousa. They have this listed in Flow as Tainan Dalpra by side Katagatame. This was like a modified arm-in guillotine choke.
They called it an Almeida guillotine. That's what they called it.
Okay. It looked like a modified Peruvian, if we're serious, like a Peruvian necktie.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like the same grip. It is Tainan Dalpra sets this up exactly like you would do a Peruvian necktie, but he just keeps the leg that historically will come up over their shoulder, below it, like a guillotine grip.
Yeah.
So it's just basically a really high arm-in guillotine that he allows the person to turn away into to alleviate the pressure and give the backup. Wild grip. Not something we see. It's something we used to see in MMA probably 15 years ago. A lot more. When you had guys that were like straight up like, this is a really good grappler and this is a guy. And it gives you a ton of control and it makes it really hard for the person to hit you. So this was a lot more in favor back then, especially when you had big differentials in grappling ability. Like, this position is not super easy to get to if a guy has really, really good posture control, which everyone in major organizations has now. Really, so there's some pieces that make this work. Tainan is one of the best in the world. Absolutely top 5, even Nogi probably at middleweight now. That's probably why he's able to get this specific position on Rene Sousa, because of how he throws him, because of how he's controlling Rene Sousa's posture. This kind of went... I'm not going to say this went how we expected it to go. I was a little surprised that Tainan... I was impressed, not surprised. I was impressed with Rene Sousa's defense for the entirety of the match. Dude was in this the entire match. And Tainan was looking for the sub.
Constantly pressuring him. Constant pressure. Yeah. So Tainan was even from the rip. I thought he just had an edge about him. He looked physical. He wanted to smoke. Yeah. Which is kind of like, wow, I'm not used to seeing that from Tainan so early. He came out and he mean mugged him, man. I think he came out and he just.
Yeah, it's
after the initial stand up, he
broken hand.
Well, yeah.
Which we all kind of forget. It's like an obviously broken hand that he continues to fight with, which I would love him to not fight with. But the thing that was interesting here is I was curious about halfway through the match, because I expected Tainan to go in, sub Rene quickly, make a statement, and be like, I'm here, and do a thing. The fact that Rene Sousa has defense as good as he has, and the way that Tainan was controlling some of these positions, the way that he was kind of sitting on Rene's hip when Rene would go to turtle, the way that he was looking for the back take. I am curious if his team at AOJ, Mendes Brothers, Colabate, that whole AOJ competition team, if they are trying to be like, hey man, go get some no-gi work. Go and get some mat time. Go versus Rene. Because Rene, again, he's a dangerous submission artist. That the way that we talked about it last week in the preview, Tainan's game should match up really, really favorable with how Rene wants to play. Rene's a guy that's historically not been super concerned about his guard retention because he wants to buggy choke you from the bottom.
Right.
So he's like, it will allow Tainan opportunities to work in no-gi that a lot of times he won't have. But because Rene is so dangerous and willing to throw subs at you, it will keep Tainan honest. And so I think it's a good match for him to get experience on. The way that Tainan was playing, I was curious if that is what he was trying to do. In early career in boxing, a lot of times, you'll have guys, they'll take a match, and the guy will be, yeah, man, I can give the guy 4 rounds. Like, you'll have someone that will be in there, they have a skill set. I'm going to explain this really poorly for how boxing brings people up, but you'll have a guy that has a skill set taking on a new prospect. Like, the prospect's is there to beat them. But that guy's going to give him work in a specific area and like give him ring time, give him time to like figure out what he needs to do under the bright lights and then the stage.
Makes sense.
Which is really similar to how AOJ brings up a lot of their athletes. Like they give them, and how Danaher brings up a lot of his athletes. They give you measured tests here. And as coaches, they want you to be doing specific things. Like we've heard for years, like Danaher, he'd have his athletes compete at like Naga and stuff like that, and like, you're gonna hit this choke here.
Yeah.
Or Gordon, hey man, you're gonna sub him at, with the famous match he had with Horian. Not Horian. What great not Half. Metamoris guy. The guy owner of Metamorphs. I'm blanking on fought in Bellator. He was like, I'm gonna sub him at, be in the 13th minute of the match, 30 seconds with a triangle, and like he carried him through the entire match and then subbed him at that time period that he was supposed to do that. Like Gordon calling his matches, that's a thing that a lot of the big camps, a couple of the camps will do. I was really curious if Tainan was taking this match with Rene in order to get good experience with a guy that was like, hey man, you're gonna be tough to put away. You're going to have a favorable style matchup. And it will give you time to like get experience in no-gi as we transition your career from just exclusively gi into both gi and no-gi. Again, I don't know if that's true or not, but just the way that is like late in the match, there was a way that I saw Tainan kind of leaning on Rene Sousa's turtle that made me think that he was trying to like kind of reevaluate how he wanted to progress the match instead of just taking the back, looking for the rear naked choke.
Well, he was consistently going for that guillotine. He went for that thing 3 or 4 times.
He went for it.
Oh,
like,
man, I keep messing up.
It's all good. He
went for multiple times. He would even turn into it and kind of, he was looking for that. So maybe that's what he was trying to do. Maybe that's what he was told to do.
We saw, I think, it was
and maybe
on the third time.
Rene Sousa's game lended to him doing that.
Yeah, I love the guillotine grip too. That finish.
That's one of my favorite finishes, man. I love the guillotine. The way that he punches that in, the camera angle went for the finishing sequence was great because you could see Tainan just like punch that deep arm guillotine in. It's like he throws it traditionally like you'd throw an anaconda from that position, and then he sits back into it like you're doing a head and arm choke, like you're doing an arm and guillotine, and then he throws his outside leg like centered like you would do a Peruvian, but keeps it in the. It's a really like. And the first time he threw it, he missed because I remember that he threw it and he missed, and he kind of threw him over his shoulder, and then he actually tried to finish him with a darce. Yeah, and then they continued to roll over it, and he kind of had to let go. So that was really funny. Speaking, that was the thing that I was most impressed with this entire match from Rene was you saw Tainan miss it, and you saw Rene go, oh, you're not going to darce me. Like, I'm not going to get darce here. I know. And you saw that veteran. Rene's like 22, but like he's been competing in no-gi for a long time. You saw him go, no, I'm going to turn down. And he bellies down and bellies out. And it was just it was a funny sequence. You saw Dalpra like, you saw him almost expect to get it and then kind of like, and kind of have to like scramble more than he likes to scramble. And then have to readjust. Again, I was very happy with the grip maintenance from Dalpra. We've not bad with a broken hand.
Not bad with a broken hand. How many matches? Do you know how many matches we've seen him in no-gi offhand? Not very many. Under 5, I think.
5, probably not too many more than 5.
All of them have been on Who's Number One.
Definitely less than 10.
Yeah, all of them have been on Who's Number One. I don't remember exactly how many he's had, but I think they've all been here. Like not bad for a guy with less than 10.
Yeah.
Easily, probably less than 5, I think.
Agree.
No-gi matches. Again, it doesn't help that you're, almost a 67-2 or something like that, or like whatever his crazy IBGF number is.
I have it right here, 87-3.
87-3?
87-3 is what they say on BJJ Heroes. And maybe that's his black belt. I don't know, but it says 80.
Yeah, it's a black belt.
87-3.
What's the second? What's the third one? Because he has one loss to Francisco Lowe with the knee thing, position 19, illegal technique of the IBJJF rulebook, and he has one loss to Jansen Gomez via underhook and 2 points in the first Worlds, and then what's the third one?
Good question.
Well, doesn't matter. But I was really impressed with it overall. The finish is just phenomenal. We go back and watch the finish. It is a really unique way to finish that most people are going to go Peruvian here and finish it kind of like I'm blanking on the guys. I'm going to MMA today a lot. There's a guy in the UFC years ago that would throw Peruvians a lot. He has a funny picture of him with really small, like, kids' glasses. And I'm blanking on his name. He was like a middleweight, right around like time like Ryan LaFleur was in the UFC. I'm blanking on his name. Prolific UFC fighter, ranked for a long time. He would throw Peruvians no-gi like this in a very similar way. But
all right, we're looking for that third loss. Now you got me guessing.
We're gonna get
Mika. He lost to Mika
at EUG. Yeah, not at EUG. Yeah. EUG 2.
EUG.
I thought in IBJJF he's only got the 2 losses.
Yes, correct.
Yeah, okay. Let's talk about the one that I wanted to talk about earlier.
Yes.
Middleweight bout. Ronaldo Junior defeats Jay Rodriguez via decision. This was a great back and forth match. I'm gonna run through the match a little bit play by play. We don't do that as much anymore, but I think for this one it makes a lot of sense to do that. Early in the round, we previewed it last week. We're like, I'm not sure how Ronaldo Junior's wrestling is going to be. Like, he's a good wrestler. He's given a lot of guys problems. We were impressed with his matchup with Cody Steele.
Another guy that's gone from gi to no gi.
Yeah.
Recently.
And then Jay Rodriguez went, hey man, I'm going to put on a high school wrestling clinic on you like nobody's business. He would hit him with shuck buys and go unders and duck unders, and it was
Lots
just
of
shots, and he would counter Ronaldo Junior's shots and trip him, and it was just over and over and over. The first 10 minutes of this match was a Jay Rodriguez either offensive or defensive counter wrestling like thing, which I was really impressed that he was willing to shoot as much as he was on Ronaldo Jr. We know how good Ronaldo Jr.'s guillotine is. Again, he has that guillotine on Fight Pass Invitational recently over Zaki Behance, who's also a guillotine specialist. Like, to be able to guillotine a guillotine specialist from a bad counter shot is like, okay, his guillotine's good.
Yep.
And Jay Rodriguez just doesn't care. One of 2 reasons. He doesn't know that Ronaldo Jr. is good at the guillotine, which
he has to know that.
I hate to say that. I do not know.
Okay.
It is he didn't know who Tainan Dalpra was like a year ago. He's like, I don't know who he is. He didn't know who Marcelo was.
But just to be fair, up to a year ago, Tainan was primarily a gi guy. So it makes you wonder.
Bad example.
But
he didn't know who like anyone was, and it wasn't a joke. Like, the guy he was facing, he was like, I don't know, he wrestles, and you're like, it was like Craig Jones and him did a thing behind the scenes, and it was like basically him sitting on the couch at B Team and Craig like asking who all these famous people were, and he's like, oh, you sent me a match from him to watch. I saw that he did the thing, and I was like, yeah, I like that, and then that's all I.
Wasn't there something that he didn't know who Marcelo Garcia was?
It was Marcelo. Like, he didn't know who Marcelo was.
Yeah.
So
maybe there's some truth.
It is very possible that Jay Rodriguez had no idea he was good at the guillotine. But there was one sequence in particular here. Jay Rodriguez shoots in, and I'm holding the mic this week, so it's hard. And he grabs the leg. On the other hand, he goes over the shoulder as Ronaldo tries to lace the guillotine. Jay Rodriguez starts to take him down, and as Ronaldo starts to pull in for the guillotine, he keeps walking the arm over and over and over, and eventually just kind of chops him down all the way and ends up just freeing his head. It's a really classic guillotine defense. It's a really classic way to do a chop. I don't know, there's a wrestling name for it. You chop over at the shoulder as you chop out the knee as you drive forward. It's like a pick single, maybe is what it's called. Again, I'm not a wrestler. You saw him just hit this on Ronaldo Jr. and just stop the guillotine. And I was like, that's a really interesting. I don't know if this is just Jay Rodriguez wrestling or if this is him jiu-jitsu wrestling, or if this is just another reason that he has decided to do this technique this way. But the first 10 minutes of this match were pretty much one-way traffic in favor of Jay Rodriguez, half the time off the mat, countering or hitting wrestling takedowns on Ronaldo Junior. And Ronaldo Junior did not have an answer for Jay Rodriguez's wrestling, and I was really impressed with that. So
there was an early exchange though where Jay took his back, and then and then Ronaldo quickly just rolled front roll, peeled him off his back and back, and it was quicker than you know what, man. It was very.
He did a Granby roll. He was like, I do not want the guy that knows how to break a choke and his brother who saved us for it on my back.
It was very impressive.
It was great. He didn't ever let Jay Rodriguez really like fully establish the back mount.
Yeah. But other than that, it was I think 100% J Rod.
Yeah, and it was wrestling.
But it was close. It wasn't like he wasn't blowing him out of the water, but it was. I think it was obvious, but it wasn't like a huge discrepancy.
Sorry, the timer to upload the podcast is going off now because it's 11:15 and this show comes out in 45 minutes. So we'll keep going.
Okay.
We get to the first 10 minutes of the match and they go, judges favor J-Rod. We're like, yep, that makes sense. Second 5 minutes of the match, judges favor J-Rod. Like, that makes sense. Third 5-minute period of the match, again, these are judged in 3 periods. Ronaldo Junior has a good sequence. He puts Jay Rodriguez down. He then counters Jay Rodriguez's guard, eventually gets to the mount. It's a neat sequence to get there. It was really Ronaldo Jr. knew how J-Rod wanted to re-guard, got ahead of it, goes right to mount. And then he starts working for head and arm, mounted head and arm.
Okay.
It's tight, but the arm is up high, and we've all seen literally last week and the week before, we're talking about how good Jay Rodriguez's arm triangle defense is. It's just like he's just annoying. If Johnny Grippo can't put you away, that's going to be really tough. And Johnny's not nearly as big as Ronaldo Jr. is. Doesn't have the length he has, but
But that's his signature submission.
That's a thing that he's really good at. And Jay Rodriguez kind of had his arm high, and I was like, okay, this looks tight, but I would be surprised if Ronaldo can put Jay away here, and he's down 2 sections of the round. He really kind of has to win this. J-Rod gets his guard back. He gets up. They wrestle again. The match ends. And then the decision goes, and they give it to Ronaldo. And I went, okay, well, that's weird because this happens to J-Rod frequently. It happened at Polaris. It happened here. My guess is they judge the match as a whole, which I like. So it's okay. You have wrestling dominance from J-Rod early, but no really good position taken, no sub attempts. You have nothing that is like concrete, like, oh yeah, he is really, working to put Ronaldo away. He's winning the wrestling exchanges. He's clearly winning the match. And then you have one sequence late in the match. It's like, oh, you have a near sub, not like a close. It's like it's in 1FC they would call it a catch.
Right.
I give it catch.
Right.
That one moment wins the entirety of the match and who's number one, which I think is fine. It's the biggest moment of the match. It was the only near sub you had.
Yep.
Who's number one is both positional, which it was. It was a mounted head and arm triangle, and also positional work from Jay Rodriguez, but nothing that really resulted in long-term control. It is really difficult to understand this, though, when you keep seeing the pieces at the bottom of the screen that go judges' favor, and they look like rounds won.
Correct.
And so you would assume that, hey, man, Ronaldo is required then to put Jay Rodriguez away in that third round to win.
Because he's seemingly down 2 rounds to none.
And we've seen that. It was okay, seemingly. So he's down 2 rounds.
Yep.
And in Polaris, and this is one of the problems we have with the way Polaris does it, Polaris used to do it you win rounds, even if you demolish the guy 10-8 in that third round, it doesn't matter. You've still won the first 2 rounds. Who's number one appears to judge it as a whole, which, again, as a judging style that I like more, it is just very confusing when your on-screen graphic shows that the guy is winning 2 rounds and then loses the decision.
Yeah.
It is just frustrating because it's that's maybe not the best way that you can graphically display that for matches like this where it's it's a close match. I don't really have a problem with Ronaldo Jr. winning it. He had the closer sub at the end. He had a good sequence. I think if you're going to show it and judge it with judges' favor throughout the entirety of the thing, it leads me to believe that you're doing it by rounds, which then makes this decision not make a lot of sense unless you thought this was a 10-7, which it wouldn't be because he didn't break his arm.
Correct.
He's maybe it's a 10-8 and then there's a draw. But to have that one sequence supersede the 10 minutes prior,
it's kind of strange.
It's kind of strange.
It doesn't feel right.
Yeah. If you judge it as a whole, I think it's fine.
Yeah.
Because it's again the biggest sequence. But it was just weird to see it in real time because Ronaldo wins and I was like, oh, that's odd. It's also funny that it's happened to J-Rod twice, where he's won 2 rounds of something and then lost one, and then you're like, oh, that's.
I mean, you even saw him after they announced the decision. He kind of put his arms up, like, what's going on here?
Yeah.
But but let me preface this by saying that Ronaldo and Jay are 2 of my favorite grapplers in the world. I mean, I love their style. Very physical, very young guys. Go for the kill constantly. They don't want to win by points. They want to win by the sub. It was just really strange how it just seemed up until that point the judges were enamored with Jay's performance. He was up two periods to none. Now, granted, this was the only submission attempt or close submission attempt we had, so it was very, glaring that the judges weighed that more than the previous 2 rounds or 2 periods of dominance. Ronaldo mentioned it during his interview that Jay was very good. He was a very good wrestler, but this is jiu-jitsu and this, that, and the other. And he actually he wouldn't be against a rematch. He said his jiu-jitsu was better and blah blah blah. So maybe they were just judging it on.
I mean, they have to be judging it on the sub attempt. For this criteria,
they have to. But it's just very confusing that he's up 2 and all of a sudden he has the closest thing to a submission the entire match, and all of a sudden that one. It just kind of just wipes out everything else that happened before.
Wipes out 13 other minutes of the match.
Yeah, just kind of
But again, 13 minutes of not substantial control, but also you happen to be winning every exchange.
Yes.
It's a weird one.
It's really weird.
It kind of highlights just some of the problems we have in grappling. It's also why I just would honestly rather have points.
Yeah.
Because we don't have to have this discussion over and over and over again. It's like, hey man, did you do the points thing? You did the points thing. It's not. We commented this weekend.
Yeah.
It's very easy to tell you who's winning. It's very easy to tell you actionably what you have to do as an athlete from a coaching perspective. It's like, yeah, man, they are down 2 points. Why? There are 30 seconds left in the match. They need to do X, Y, or Z to win this match. It makes it it's like, again, the basketball analogy. You are down 10 points with, 2 minutes remaining. You now have to make that score happen to win the match. In jiu-jitsu, we have this weird thing where you're showing me the score, seemingly.
Yeah.
And then we go to decision, and it's like, well, that's the other guy. For other criteria that we didn't really make clear. It is just one of the things that repeatedly makes the sport really difficult to watch and follow and to get new people into. Give me open scoring. Do what CGI did. Give me open scoring. Give me points, because every other sport has some framework for points that we're using. Just give it to them. Make whatever point you want. Make 1 point. Polaris does 1 point for everything.
Yeah.
Good to go. But
Simple.
these decisions are really hard to talk around because it's like we're using weird criteria and displaying it like MMA when it's not being judged like MMA. It's being judged like MMA in Japan.
Now, maybe one thing they can do immediately is probably not keep track of who wins what periods on the bottom. Just don't even show that
on the bottom. If you're not going to use it for decision, just like, hey, man,
show it?
Flash it, and then make it go away.
I think that's how it used to be in the beginning, right? They would just flash it.
And it made more sense then. It's like, hey, man, they're favoring here, but because it used to be at that point in the match who they were favoring.
Yes, exactly.
Hey, who we're favoring this guy here. Okay.
And in that way, it would have been a lot more clear who won that. But
now it looks like you're winning rounds.
Yep. You're keeping track of a little ticker on the bottom. He's up two periods to nothing, and all of a sudden the other person gets the third period. You're like, the other person wins now?
Yeah. So
interesting.
We've beaten this dead horse enough. No,
he's dead.
Not sorry. This is one of the things. These are the things that I see now in grappling when we watch grappling. Now, let's talk about a women's heavyweight match. We have Rafaela Geddes versus Paige Yvette. Rafaela Geddes takes that by decision over Paige Yvette. This match was a barn burner. If you haven't seen this match, you owe it to yourself to watch this match. It was very exciting. I was really impressed with both these women. Rafaela Geddes wins this pretty much straight up just due to aggressiveness, and she has more subs. She has more choke attempts. She has more leg lock attempts. She just has more attempts in it stuff. And again, as we talked about in the previous couple of matches, with the decision criteria, both these ladies went back and forth top position. We talked about in our preview, whoever was going to be the top position player was probably going to win. I think that's definitely correct here, but we have Rafaela Guedes repeatedly throwing up the stronger subs. Paige Yvette, to her credit, man.
It was game.
Super game. Gets out of arm bars and triangles and foot locks. And at no point did it ever look like she was just hanging on. She would get out and do the thing I love the most. Counter. There were two of them that resulted in Paige Yvette pulling out of a triangle and then immediately passing Rafaela Guedes' guard, that classic pull-out pass. Really good work. I would honestly love to see this one as a rematch. I would love to have it a little higher up on the card. Happy it was main card.
Yes.
We have not got a chance to talk about Paige Yvette in a while. Her game has improved drastically. Rafaela Guedes is one of the best women in the world, and for Paige Yvette to be able to go toe-to-toe with her and
lose on decision.
Yeah. And again, it was Rafaela mostly with the sub attempts. But I would be very curious in a points battle how much closer this is, because I think this is pretty close on the points. This was very back and forth, and there were moments where Paige was dominating from top position or on top or getting sweeps and passing through.
Right.
And then Rafaela was countering and doing the same thing. This match was a really, really good match. I think one of the more fun technical matches we had this weekend, other than Keith and Pato. That was a lot of fun too. So that was fun. Go back and watch that one. We had a welterweight bout between Michael Sains and Daniel Slather. Michael Sains wins this one, mostly on attempts. He looked really good. We haven't seen. I think this is his Who's Number One debut. We know Daniel Sattler is his name. Is really, really good submission hunter. He has that flying armbar triangle off of the pit wall at Pit Submission. Pit Submission. He was in Pit Submission, yeah. Michael Sains looked good, man. Good wrestling. Really happy with how rounded out his game looks. Good attempts on the feet. Good attempts overall. This was... I'm really happy for them to put this one on the main card. Michael Sains looked good. He wins a decision here. We also know how dangerous Daniel Sattler is, so... Really good luck for Michael Sains. I'm trying to think where we saw Michael Sains. It might have been on Pit Submissions. I'm blanking on where we've seen him before. We've talked about him before, and it's going to kill me because I'm not remembering it. We are running out of time because we have to upload the podcast. Let's move real quickly through. Let's talk about. Honestly, we'll probably push Polaris to next week.
Yeah,
seriously.
I think so. We should.
I think that'll be just better use of our time here. Undercard, we had a featherweight bout versus we had Zach Kaina
versus Isaac Cordova.
It was a rematch. Kaina's good. He was a lot of fun to watch. Didn't know he was married to Jessica Khan. They showed her on the broadcast. I
didn't know she was married either.
I didn't. He's married to Jessica Khan. And they were hinting at her coming back onto the Who's Number One stage, and I was like, I would love to see Jessica Khan back on Who's Number One. That'd be awesome. Again,
like the Canutos, right? Why not?
Yeah. Both the Kina and Khan back on the card, the same card. That would be awesome. They're also young too. He looked good versus Isaac Cordova. Again, very similar. Not really similar. It was much more action-packed than their IBGF matches have been. But it was really Zach more in the driver's seat, more on the feet, wrestling up, positional work. Cordova was a little bit more on the defensive the entirety of the match. And I'm happy with where Zach is going. I would like to see... It's hard at featherweight. I think both these guys are actually bantamweights technically. This is just being contested at featherweight. Mm-hmm. It did seem like that Zach was really, really hell-bent on going for something when Cordova was still kind of partially out or partially through or not quite controlled all the way. And it seems sort of this style. We've seen why Zach can be somewhat inconsistent sometimes. I would love to see AOJ kind of work to kind of have the level of control that Tainan has. Hey, man, and again, different weight classes, different skill sets. At the lower weight classes, you're going to have more scrambler guys. Guys are just harder to put away. They're just more flexible, and
that's their game.
And that's their game, and that's the weight class that Zach competes at. I think he competes at light feather. I don't think he's rooster weight, but I think he's light feather. We just saw this kind of the same things we've seen before from his game. It's really good, but he didn't have full control for a lot of the subs that he was trying to put Isaac Cordova away with. And I think that's something that needs to come into his game at bantamweight if he's going to be like really, really successful consistently.
Agreed.
Also on the card, we had middleweight bout. Victor Silveira defeated Ian Butler by rear naked choke. We had a undercard women's unlimited bout. That's a weird way to say open weight.
There you go.
Rhonda Willick defeating
Solange Van Doom.
by heel hook. We had a lightweight bout. Sarah Galvao defeated Katie Carr via arm triangle Americana.
Yes.
This is, you said this one?
I saw that one.
This is Andre Galvao and Angelica Galvao's daughter. This is her Who's Number One debut, I think. Was it her debut?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so.
Katie Carr put up way more of a fight than I expected for who they gave Sarah Galvao for her debut.
Yeah.
I was impressed. Sarah Galvao tried a couple of times to put Katie Carr away, and Katie Carr just was like, no, I'm not gonna let you put me away. I'm gonna decide to not get put away, have good defense, push you off. Eventually, Sarah Galvao goes. She gets a high triangle. She continues to try to go for the triangle from the back a couple of times, and doesn't have a ton of success there. Eventually, locks like a standard triangle and goes Americana on it.
Correct.
Again, very, very good finish. I forecast that we are going to be seeing a lot of Sarah Galvao in the coming years.
She's very good.
Given your dad is
really
Andre Galvao and your mom is Angelica Galvao.
Arguably the GOAT, your father. Yeah. You're going to see a lot
your dad's one of the
more.
greatest of all time, and your mom's also no slouch either. This will be, we are going to see a lot more from Sarah Galvao. She's also bigger. She's a lightweight.
Do we know how she is?
I think she's 18 or 19.
So she's probably been doing jiu-jitsu for now for what, 15,
16 years. Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
I think, is she a new black belt? I think
she is. I think she's fairly new.
She
within the past year or so, maybe.
Well, just last 3 or 6 months. Worlds. She's either a new brown belt or a new black belt. I think she's a new black belt. I think she is a black belt now. Might be still a brown belt, but regardless, gonna get black in the next 8 months if she's not a black belt already. You're gonna see a ton more from Sarah Galvao. She looks good. Her game still looks like it is in development, but if she's going to hunt the sub this hard, we've seen her on ADXC, we've seen her on other super fight cards, but now she's being put on the Who's Number One scene. That means she's going to start coming up the rankings. We're going to see her probably in the next year or two be quickly entering those rankings and then probably taking on very, very top-level women very quickly, which I'm down for.
I'm down for. I'm thinking Jasmine Rocha. For some reason, her name comes to mind. Is she lightweight? She's bigger. Is she heavier than lightweight?
No, I think
for some reason because she's another young grappler.
Under 65. I don't think she's 55 kilos. Because Jasmine's like, when I stand next to Jasmine, she's very close to my size.
She's like 19, 20, right?
Something like that. Yeah, she's in Fion's weight class, and Fion's like a 35er.
Okay. Typically,
I think Sarah Galvao is gonna end her career as like a 70 or an 85er.
Okay.
Like she seems very strong, like her dad. It has a very similar kind of build to her dad. So it would make. I don't think that. I think she's going to be a full weight class above Fion and Jasmine.
I think so. Okay.
It'd be a good match though.
Because for some reason, Jasmine Rocha came to mind when I saw her, Sarah Galvao.
They're both super aggressive, younger women. It'd be a fun match to make. I think Jasmine might be too much too soon, but again, we haven't seen Sarah Galvao really tested heavily at the black belt level, and so this next year I think will be really exciting to start seeing her against the elite black belts to just see where her game is at that level. Again, I don't foresee having any hiccups because again, with your upbringing in living in the Athos gym, but again, you never know. Our last bet on the card, we had a youth undercard bout. Icar Moreno versus Christopher
Sarkeesian.
And that was a sub as well there. So that was Who's Number One, 26. Again, it was a fun card. I enjoyed a lot of the matchups. Again, go back and watch Rafael Geddes versus Paige Yvette. It was wildly fun, and it's really cool. Again, we haven't had a chance to talk about Paige's game, I think, since Subversive. It's been like a while, and I was just really, really impressed with how well she looked versus Rafael Geddes. Like, really, really impressive there. So,
which is unusual because typically, if you grapple against Rafaela, you don't look so good.
You don't look good. You just look like, oh man, that's like people can beat Rafael Geddes, but usually if she's beating you, it is very like
it's telling.
It's one-sided.
Yeah.
So any thoughts on the card before we close it out?
No, it was very, very entertaining. Go back and watch some things. I may have to rewatch some of these bouts as myself. It was lots of fun, man.
Yeah.
Lots of
so
fun.
I lied in the intro. We are going to cover Polaris next week because the show has to go up in 25 minutes. And I do not think we can get through that in the outro.
Nope.
Title fight for Polaris was Helena Kravar. I think we probably lead into the next week. I'm just saying now, I was really impressed with her this week. We talked about her a couple of weeks ago on her open weight bout at Fight to Win, and it was like a lot of guard work. It was a good decision win, but it wasn't a very impressive match. This match on Polaris 31, Helena Kravar like laid the hammer down and dominated
that top game.
All 3 rounds,
Yeah.
and I was really, really impressed with. Again, it looks like a classic Javalitos match.
Yeah.
Very much one-way traffic from Kravar against Annabelle Lopez. Like it was a very dominating top position performance.
Yes.
Something that we haven't seen from Kravar.
Because once again, she likes
In
to
a
enter the
while.
legs. She likes to enter the legs.
Yeah,
So
and her
typically
legs,
she's
and the triangles and the arm bars, and
Right.
like it is nice
From
to
the bottom.
see her after that match we had a couple weeks ago. We had some concerns a couple of weeks ago about like where her game was going, where it was developing. She kind of put a lot of that to bed. I think this last week on a Polaris, like
They must have watched the podcast, man. She must have heard some things that she didn't like, man.
I hope not. But yeah, no, really, really impressive performance. We'll get into more of that next week. And sorry to do this. We don't ever usually do this, but it's been a tight week this week, and so I don't want to put out the show late because we've never done that. And so we will cover that next week. Corey, any kind of closing thoughts? Anything fun you got going on this week?
Just get ready for the snow, man. And the schools to be closing out early and lots of telework.
I had a bunch of people cancel stuff tomorrow in the field, and I'm like hoping that I can get half of it done now. And I'm like,
Well, they say it shouldn't start snowing until about noon. Maybe
one is the weather closure, but I'm just hoping it's like when the weather's going to get bad here.
Yeah.
I'm just hoping that I can get through like half of what I need to do, and then call some contacts and be like, yeah, everything's closed, and they're going to be like, I'm already gone. And so that's what I'm hoping happens. I've already had one major one cancel. I'm just like, please just let me get through. So I'm not going to go back, but
And it's not going to be much snow, 4 or 5 inches. But here, you get 4 or 5 in Maryland.
Maryland,
In
that's a
the
lot.
DMV,
For Maryland, that's a lot.
DMV, 4 or 5 inches is like the end of the world, man. There's no milk, there's no strawberries, there's no bread.
It's so funny.
Peanut butter's gone.
I think it's hilarious. But yeah, people can't drive in here.
No.
Stay safe, stay home, watch some jiu-jitsu. You have some great matches to watch from the weekend.
Yes.
You have just a phenomenal amount of grappling that you can watch now. Marcelo Garcia's back. Go back and watch all his matches on the snow day. Corey, I have nothing else. Everything else?
Nope.
Cool. As always on the show, I'm your host, Maine's our co-host.
Corey.
And we are the Grappling Reruns, and that what it is. Stay safe. If you like the show, please consider sharing it on Facebook with the folks at your gym. It's the best way that we grow the show, and we really appreciate it. You can reach out to us on email.
We also have Instagram, we have Facebook, we have Twitter, we have Google+.
Until that shuts down.
We have a website.
If you have an event you would like to have us cover, please let us know. If you have a name, like most people do, and you'd like to have us stop butchering it,
Let us know.
reach out to us. The show is also available on YouTube, Spotify, in addition to iTunes and every other podcast service. We very much appreciate your time, and thank you.